Kayo with Plastic House on the Base of Sky. I said yesterday during the Bellacore review that this one was kind of for me, and it's based off of the fact that I've really been a big fan of Toby Driver's work for a long period of time. All his work throughout Kayo as well as his previous band, and the band that a lot of people know him from, which is Modeling of the Well. And I'm always excited to see what new direction seems to be taken, since every Kayo album feels like it has its own identity. They're a band that has some hallmarks, they have some trademarks, things that make them who they are, but they never really aim and never really do make the same album twice. So where does this album place itself? Where are we at as far as Kayo is concerned? With their last release, they took a lot of inspiration from scores such as Blade Runner and were able to craft some really unique textures based around that. But where are we here? Here we have something that almost seems like a continuation of what they did with their previous affair, and it's also one that also has its own charm. It's one that seems to take a little bit of a direct reference from some of the huge synth sounds or the huge piano-driven or more so, keyboard-driven sounds of the 1980s. I'm thinking of bands like The Cure and Depeche Mode, only giving it a resonant texture, something that is uniquely Kayo, something that's uniquely 2006 teen, that is. Wow, 10 years ago is 10 years ago, not today. But it's also one where the songwriting feels like it's in a confident and comfortable level. And that's pretty positive, considering whenever you have shifts in direction, if you're able to be confident within that, it already just sort of emanates out of the pores of the songs that are represented. So the very first cut that really stands out to me, even though this is only 5 tracks and not even 40 minutes in length, is All the Pain in All the Wide World, because of that 10-minute runtime. And why it stands out to me is that unlike Amelia's Theme, which is the very first cut off of this disc, this is one that has and employs a little bit more of the repetitious idea near the midway point of this, and it sort of showcases, really bleeds through its pores, like I was saying, of what the brand new sort of side of Kayo is all about. It has that, synth-driven idea, and it's something that is very much highlighted on this album. This is one where the guitars, while they are present, are a little bit more muted, a little bit more in the background. This is not one that is driven by just the sound of the guitar. It's instead one that is driven more so by the keys, and that gives this a kind of brand new sparkle to it. It's almost like getting a car that has a different, a different model type, either that or a different way in which it comes. Instead of it looking like a car, maybe it looks like a gigantic box, or it looks like a sheet of paper, and you just have a little bubble on top, or that's the Jetsons car, who the hell knows. It just gives it that sort of new idea sheen, which it's not all that new. This is a part of Kayo that has bled through before on other tracks, but to have it be, done in this large-scale manner is one that is a huge commitment, and it certainly shows where Toby's mind is, musically speaking. And this song showcases that wonderfully. The atmosphere, the space, the way in which the construction process is able to really take these new ideas in and reproduce something from them. They reproduce something that's very special. But Magnetism, the very first cut that we got off of this, along with Rings of Earth, both really showcase that sort of, synth-driven 80s style vibe. In fact, Magnetism's opening almost sounds like it should be a, music for like an 8 or 16-bit video game during this introduction. And it's something where they're able to mold these little, ideas and spot around them and give it a little bit of that experimental touch that Kayo has been known for, and that they love to sort of, weasel their way in, to give it that little extra oomph of where the fuck are we going. And it delivers songs that have a lot of heart, but also a lot of theory, a lot of different, little twists and little turns and little avenues that seem to be barely tread by the more conventional, artists of the date. Rings of Earth, though, especially, I like the way in which this almost sounds off with a very spacey vibe, one that has a lot of the idea of, the outer universe. You listen to this and you almost think that you're going to be starting off a pilot episode of a sci-fi series, and then Rings of Earth, of course, I made the Rings of Saturn joke yesterday, and this feels like it's right at home with some of the material that you heard off of Coffin's Abaya. But the one song that kind of makes me feel like Toby's direction and Toby's thought process never strays too far from where Modeling of the Well was, either that or how Modeling always really maintains itself as a part of him. The one song that happens on every single Kayo album for this album is Brittle Urchin. This is one that has it's a very morose sounding opening to it. It's one that has a little bit of a darkness to it, but at the same time, the only thing that came through my mind was sort of this is the antithesis of the almost happy chimes that you get from a Modeling song such as Stones of October sobbing right at its beginning, right at its inception, and it's certainly one that kind of has that off-key and off-balanced approach. However, this is also one that just by the way the track sort of moves on, the pacing of this, the sort of calmed, laid back, almost, astral atmosphere that you gain from Brittle Urchin definitely harkens back to some of those days and some of those tracks off of Bath and Leaving Your Body Map, the ones that just seem to sparkle and really remain within the minds and the hearts of many fans of this band and many fans of Toby Driver and just fans in general. Folks that find experimental and avant-garde to certainly have a real patriarch in Kayo and Modeling of the Well. Overall, this is an album that is interesting in its sort of short runtime, but it's also one that is sort of boosted by it. This is an album that does not feel like it intrudes you too much, and I feel like that's the point. Whereas with other discs, the real purpose of an album may be to try to push the envelope of what you're able to take or willing to accept. This is one that stays within the confines of, pretty weird or, pretty experimentative, pretty explorative, but always keeps you sort of centered around a real cautiously delivered universe. One that does not aim to overwhelm or overburden you, but instead leads you to comfortable melody, and then whenever the surprises do come, whenever the strange little twists and knobs do occur, they're more, you see them coming a little bit more as you become an expert of this album, and you start to understand them a little bit more. You start to realize that this is just a way in which to shift tone, in which to maybe mute a little bit of pacing or create it, and it really accomplishes a lot of what it sets out to do. Overall, this musical direction is one that for some fans will take a little bit of getting used to. But I also feel that Kayo presented this album and presented this direction in such a traditional way for the band. It's to the point right now that fans that are long-term shouldn't be really all that surprised by this direction. It's almost like listening to Heritage or Pale Communion by Opeth. You should have seen the change coming, and even if you didn't like the change whenever it happened, you should still at least have been able to see it coming, based off of albums such as Damnation. With Kayo you could always see them sonically morphing, and that's exactly what has happened here. And it's one that works. It's an 86 out of 100 album. This is certainly one that I feel I would love to hear more exploration from this side of the band. It's just a really, it's kind of a fun thing to listen to based off of it. It does have a little electricity to it, which certainly adds to its benefit. But it's also one where I'd like to hear how you can combine Brittle Urchin in with some of this other work. Kind of take some of those textures and just add some layers. And maybe just go with a lot more density. But at the same time, I'm also very interested to see how a more simplistic notion of this could potentially work. A little bit more droning, a little bit more built up atmosphere. And I'd also just be really interested to know if there's a little bit of inspiration from that 80s, Depeche Mode, Cure, that era, just for funsies. Someone ask Toby for me and let me know. I wonder what you guys think about this album. What do you think about Plastic House at the Base of Sky by Kayo. Tell me in the comments. I'm coverkillernation, and I will talk to you guys very, very soon with an exciting announcement. Take care.